Hey guys, what is going on? So I just wanted to go over my body scan result that I got here today and compare that to the one that I got at the very beginning of my cut. That is a 47-day difference. So go over those numbers in terms of lean mass, in terms of fat loss and everything like that. And then go over where I'm going to be starting my bulk at, which is going to be in 8 days from now, June 7th. And I have a coach for this as well, so it should be a very productive process. So anyway, I'm going to pop this up here on the screen. Before I get into it, I do want to go over how this first result is the result of me post-COVID. So I did end up losing about 5 to 7 pounds over that process. I will go over where I think that weight was actually lost from and why I think this number in terms of the overall fat mass that I lost, I think that number is actually a little bit higher. So anyway, before I get into my amendments to this, 20.4% body fat to 15.5, that's a 5% drop. Lost about 16 pounds of fat here, 4 pounds of lean mass, and overall lost about 20 pounds. So that's pretty successful over the course of a 47-day cut. So I'm happy about that at the end of the day. But like I said, in terms of this this first body scan, I just kind of want to say that I don't think that first scan is all that accurate for a couple of reasons. So first one being it was post-COVID, and I would imagine that my lean mass would have dropped over the course of that. Losing 5 to 7 pounds, I don't think that would have been pure fat. But according to this, my lean mass was 205.3, which is 1 pound off from my all-time high. So that basically is suggesting that I lost a lot of fat over the course of COVID and not lean mass, which just doesn't seem very accurate to me. And then the other one is just, having a higher body fat percentage, especially being a super heavy weight at 260 plus, you're just really not going to get as accurate results with body scans because you have more body fat overall. It's going to be harder to differentiate those numbers. So at the end of the day, they're just estimates. They're just tools that you can use as, you can use the scale, you can use the mirror, you can use these scans. They're all just parts of the equation. But I think that my fat mass would have actually been higher than what it indicated here. And I think my lean mass probably dropped off a little bit more from COVID. I could be wrong there. There is the possibility because my, last highest score was actually taken back in January. And like I said, the body scans are not as accurate when you are a higher body fat percentage and you're a heavier human being. And therefore I was not as consistent in terms of taking body scans because I was I don't know how accurate these are going to be, so I wasn't as motivated to do them. But it is possible that between January and April I put on a good amount of lean mass, and then that was what actually dropped when I had COVID. But this showing a 20.4% body fat percentage, I would imagine it was closer to 22%. So I think this is kind of underestimating where I was at in terms of body fat percentage. Now this body fat number, in terms of percent, 15.5, that seems probably a little bit more accurate to me. If anything, I was kind of thinking it would be a little bit lower, but let's just go with 15.5 and, just be a little bit humbled there. So for me, that's kind of, in terms of where I wanted to end up. I had this idea that I would end up in a 12 to 13% body fat range. To me, that's the leanest that I can go, where I really like the way that I look. And then after that, I've only, gone below that one time, and I didn't think it was worth it. So for me, 12 to 13% is kind of where I wanted to end up. But when I was kind of thinking about it a little bit more, I was okay, why am I wanting to get to that number when I'm not going to stay there, right? I'm literally just going to immediately go back into a bulk, and I'm probably going to want to put on weight in a hurry anyway. So why would I end my cuts, at 12% or something like that? So for me, my kind of end result that I want to achieve was maybe 14 to 15% is where I was okay, now that I think about it, that's kind of where I want to end my cut. And that's probably where I'm going to end up being at after, the next week or so. So overall, this fat mass number that it's showing, 15.8, like I said, I do think I was a little bit fatter after I had COVID, so I would imagine that was closer to 20 pounds of fat loss. And then this lean mass score, I do think is probably pretty accurate. So I do want to go over that in particular because that is kind of a difference in strategy that I had this cut versus last cut. So at the start of my last cut last year, I was 227 pounds. I was just kind of coming off an injury. but my body fat percentage was not that high. It was probably like 18% or something like that. So I wasn't, you know, I wasn't at that 20% body fat level. I wasn't really, you know, all that heavy. I didn't need to lose all that much weight in terms of fat mass. And I did have to recomp a little bit because I was coming off an injury and stuff like that. So I actually took about 3 months for that cut to only lose like a small amount of weight. Now, technically, like I said, I did recomp a little bit, but I ended up only losing like 9 pounds over 3 months. It was a very slow cut, but I only lost 1 pound of lean mass over that process. I ended up hitting like a bench press PR 3 months into that cut. So it was a very successful cut, but it was very slow. And I think that's the way that a lot of people do it. Like, they want to take their cut slow so they don't lose muscle, they don't lose strength. And for me, that was just not my strategy this time around. So starting my last cut, like 2 cuts ago at 227, and then starting this one at, technically it was 258, but it was more like 263 or 265. That is a massive difference in the amount of weight that I had and a massive difference in the amount of fat that I was holding. Okay, so obviously I did put on muscle over the course of that bulk, but I was holding way more fat. And the reason for that is because I was adhering to a, you know, 600-ish calorie surplus over the course of my bulk. And that is very aggressive. And yes, I put on a lot of size, a lot of strength. It was a very productive bulk. But at the end of the day, I put on a lot of fat during that process. And I wanted to get rid of that fat. And as opposed to it taking, you know, what? How long would that have taken if I would have gone at the same rate as my previous cut? It would have taken many months. So for me, I was like, okay, let me speed up the process significantly. And obviously I didn't have to deal with the whole process of recomping. So it was a little bit easier to just lose straight fat. But I was like, okay, I'm willing to sacrifice some strength. I'm willing to sacrifice some size, you know, lose a little bit of muscle over this process to take this cut from being like a 6 to 8 month cut to being like less than 2 months. And now 47 days in, I'm very happy with my body composition. I would be willing to end the cut today, but I already have a date slated for my bulk, so I'm just going to start it then. Probably going to end up losing, you know, 8% body fat over the course of it, you know, in less than 2 months. So for me, that's like way more productive. And I'm going to come back on this next bulk and I'm going to gain that size and strength back very quickly after being in a surplus. And to me, that's absolutely worth it. So is that something that you should do? Should you cut your calories significantly and try and lose this massive amount of weight? Well, if you have a lot of weight to lose, probably, because you're going to be cutting forever, if not. But if you're not in that situation, if you only want to lose a little bit of weight, you want to retain that muscle a little bit more, you can opt to cut a little bit more slowly. Personally, what works for me, and I think, you know, I have the ability to lose weight pretty quickly. I have the ability to gain weight pretty quickly. And I would much rather go over these, you know, long periods of time where I, you know, am in a significant calorie surplus, put on a lot of muscle, put on a lot of strength. You know, as somebody who's been lifting for a long period of time, the fact that I can still put on the amount of muscle and the amount of strength that I did during my last bulk is so exciting for me that I don't care about losing abs, even though I never did. I kept my abs the whole time, but I don't care about, you know, accumulating that fat over that time period, because for me, those are gains that are so far outside of the realm of what I previously thought possible when I was not bulking to that degree. So for me, having that very significant bulk, having that 600 calorie surplus, which is just like such a scary thought to other people, to like bulk at 600 extra calories for like 9 months straight, that's like so scary. But for me, that was what I needed to be able to put on the size and strength that I did. And the fact that I can cut this weight this quickly is just a testament to, you know, it being the optimal route for me personally. So as you get more advanced, it's going to be harder and harder to put on size and strength. And that's when you're going to need a little bit more of a push in terms of having more calories. And I'm not saying that you have to do it this way. I'm just explaining my logic and why I was willing to lose a little bit of size or a little bit of strength that I'm just going to gain right back anyway, as opposed to like trying to hold on to this muscle so much and keeping my calories high enough. It would just make the cut last forever. So that's why I did things the way that I did. I do think that I did lose a little bit of muscle over this cut as opposed to my last one. But they were not the same cut at all. Like, one was a very small cut, all things considered, and this one was like a massive cut. Okay, so hope that explains the reasoning. But anyway, that's all I got to say about that. I'll keep you updated, and I'll talk to you soon.